Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Wednesday Leading Change episode this week with Jakub Jurkiewicz. Hi Jakub, welcome back.
Hi, how are you doing?
Thank you very much. So Jakub, we are talking about change today because as Scrum Masters, of course, working with change, any change, it might be personal, team level, organizational level, process or technology, whatever that change is, it's very often landing on our plate and we are directly involved with it. So take a moment, tell us that story, the story of a change moment you were involved in, and also then walk us through all of those tools, the tips, the tricks, the techniques you learned back then that you still use today.
Sure. One of the biggest and most exciting change initiatives I was part of was a culture change program we did in one of my previous companies here in New Zealand. And in our approach, instead of getting the senior leaders together so that they can come up with some ideas for the change, we decided to involve the people in this change by running a series of workshops. And we used a set of different tools, but there's one tool that I love using, and I would like to tell you a bit more about. In general, culture is so hard to describe, right? And it's something that is not tangible. It's something that we cannot touch. And it's very hard to talk about it, to be honest, at least for me. And it's even harder to change. So to make it easier for the dialogue, we use this tool called Emotional Culture Deck. It's a set of cards that I will tell you a bit more about in a second. We used the cards to invite everyone in the workshops to co-create the emotional culture we wanted to have, or at least a vision for the culture, and come up with some of the actions that could help us get to that culture. And the Emotional Culture Deck itself, it consists of various cards. The main part of it are cards with names of emotions that we often consider positive or negative. So it could be engaged on one of the cards, or controlled, or stacked, or appreciated. And these cards allow people to have a vocabulary to talk about emotions. They also give people permission to be open and sensitive and vulnerable. With these cards, we facilitated an exercise asking over 70 people. We had them in one room, working in small groups. We asked them, how do you want to feel at work to be successful? So what are some of the core emotions you need to feel at work when you come to work, when you're engaged at work? What are those so that you can be successful in what you're doing? And it doesn't matter what you're doing, but how do you need to feel at work to be successful? And based on the conversations in the small groups and people sharing how they feel and how they don't feel at work and how they would like to feel, what's maybe missing from the emotional perspective, the group of 70 people came up with 6 emotions that we used to kind of put as a core of our culture, of our emotional culture that we wanted to create. And we used the emotions to design and to build empathy, to identify the behaviors we needed to stop, and to come up with actions of how we want to co-create this new culture in our organization. To be honest, this tool, the Emotional Culture Deck, I use it all the time, and it can be used on many different levels, as from individual reflections that I use almost every week, to working through change with a team, with an individual, with leaders. So it can be a great catalyst for change, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you created that description of what the future culture would feel like, right? We're talking about emotions, so people feel emotions. What were some of the lessons you took from there, maybe reflections that you did afterwards of doing that work, of doing that emotional description of a future culture?
Well, again, we in this, similar to you may remember how before we talked about the kind of appreciative approach to working with teams, and here I think it was the same, because we focused on how people wanted to feel at work, and it was because of different reasons. One of the reasons was that we just wanted to create this focus on the positivity of it and making sure that people can feel energized and feel inspired by talking about these emotions. And I think that was part of the success. And I'm not saying now that we should never talk about the kind of negativity and the negative emotion, and I often use this part as well. But in this workshop, we focus on the positivity. So that was one lesson. Another lesson from this whole thing was that actually we use these emotions together with some examples from companies all around the world and some of the things that they do. And we mixed it together, and people came up with experiments they wanted to try in their teams. And these experiments were designed with mind, like, so what are we trying to achieve? What emotions we will kind of trigger, the positive emotions we hope that to trigger? And what would be some of the success metrics that how we would know that actually this is happening? So we would ask questions like, let's say that I think one of the emotions that was, if I remember correctly, one that was identified was people wanted to feel appreciated. So if there was an experiment that would help people feel appreciated, we would ask, what do we need to see or hear so that we know that people feel appreciated around us? How we would know that? How we would make sure that we actually are sensitive to this? And this opened up a lot of empathy in people, and they started actually going a bit deeper. So how do I know that Vasco feels appreciated? What would I need to hear or see from Vasco or around Vasco so that I know that he feels appreciated, or he feels energized, or he feels engaged? I think that was one of the key parts of the whole exercise.
Yeah, that's actually a great question, because it invites empathy, right? It's like we don't even need to think about it, but the moment you put that question in somebody's mind, you're already opening the space for people to feel empathy towards each other.
Totally, yes.
Absolutely. And a great tool as well. Please do send me the links if you have for that emotional culture exploration exercise, so that we may link it up on the show notes for everybody to find it and perhaps also use it. Thank you for that, Jakub.
No worries.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.